Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning into today's broadcast. It's the Wednesday, August 26, 2026 episode of the Marco Geray Show, the only show where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Halfway through our week, folks, let's jump right into our topics today. Let's not waste any time. Dolly Parton died yesterday at the age of 80. The beloved country music legend sadly died, and it was through a diagnosis of a brief battle with cancer, I'm sorry to say to you. This woman, I gotta tell you, folks, was a national treasure. She spent her entire life, her career, bringing joy, bringing laughter, bringing hope, and everything she did, really. I mean, this was just a woman who was just really a positive force. No, I've yet to hear anybody ever say a bad thing about Dolly Parton. That's pretty rare in the American sphere of entertainment, especially today. And she was also married to her husband, Carl Dean, for 59 years, almost 6 decades together. Grew up in a one-room cabin in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee. Decides after high school she wants to pursue music, moves to Nashville, and the rest is history from there, folks. Becomes a massive philanthropist, certainly a legendary country singer and songwriter alike, and works her way up and lives the American dream. Generosity unmatched. Again, just anyone that speaks about it, anyone I could listen to yesterday, had nothing but praise for this woman. That's very, very rare. So I got to tell you, when I think about Dolly Parton, and I'm no huge country fan, I got to be honest with you, but anytime you think about somebody like this, you think of somebody like this as a role model for other people. This is the way you're supposed to act. You're out there to perform. You're out there to entertain. You're out there to have fun, enjoy yourself. She didn't get there and make vitriolic speeches about different people she may have disagreed with. She didn't talk about politics or religion to a certain degree, or shaming anyone about what they believed in. This woman was all about being a strong presence for, again, hope, for happiness. And that's how she lived her life. And I think that's a wonderful thing, folks. Really, when you think about it, that is a wonderful thing. That's a wonderful way to be remembered. That is her legacy. Certainly the music will always continue to live on, because good music never dies. But when you're thinking about somebody who is just this positive force time and time again, nobody could say a bad thing about you. I think that might be one of the best things about somebody. When people understand you as a good, genuine human being. And again, she did other things too, created Dollywood and what have you, but was certainly a strong force throughout her entire career, throughout her entire life. Certainly, again, this was unexpected to hear this, and again, it's very, very sad to hear this. But this is life, folks. You know, nothing is guaranteed to us. You gotta live one day at a time. But she certainly, definitely, most definitely lived her life, and you gotta respect that for Dolly Parton. So. Certainly my condolences to her family, to her friends, to her loved ones. I know her and her husband never had any children. But she always lived in that spirit of loving life. And I think we all, especially in 2026, could look back and say, you know what, we need to start loving life a little bit more too in this country. I think that'd be a step in the right direction. Anyways, here's a clip of Dolly Parton when she was asked about religion, and she kind of mirrors it with a song she had written. Take a listen.
I mean, I grew up knowing Jesus loved me, and I knew that through God all things were possible, and I just grew up with those little things that we just heard all the time. My grandpa was a really good preacher. He used to scare me a little bit. He was that hellfire, brimstone kind of preacher. I wrote a song years ago called Daddy Was an Old-Time Preacher Man. It was about him, about my grandpa, because one of the lines is he preached hell so hot you could feel the heat. People say, well, I'm surprised that you really talk about, your faith. I said, well, why not? That's who I am. That's what keeps me going. Anytime I'll write something and it's just a line that I know didn't come from me, I just always say, give me a high five, Lord. Give me a thumbs up.
It's amazing to me. Began singing at church as a young child, started writing songs as a young child, moves to Nashville to pursue this dream of hers, to pursue music, and she has this, breakthrough performance. She does what she wants to do. She sings about what she wants to sing about, and people love her for it. It's amazing to me. It really is when you think about it. When the odds are against you and you still overcome them, folks, sometimes that's just the best thing about life. When you show other people what you can actually do. And she certainly lived her life. She shared what she experienced with other people, and she loved doing it. And so I say to you, rest in peace, Dolly Parton, because, again, this is a woman. You don't get people like this. You get them every so often. People that match that energy, that enthusiasm for life, that love of life, and, of course, the love for your family, your friends, and your audience. That's just, again, it's remarkable when you think about her life. And that's what we should be doing today, folks. You should be embracing Dolly Parton's life and always remembering it. The music never goes away, folks. Never, never, ever. And I do got to say this to you as well, folks. This came out just before the show started today, on this Wednesday. And again, I'm very sad to report to you as well that actor Tim Curry died today. This comes out of the Hollywood Reporter. And it doesn't say the cause of death. He was 80, just like Dolly Parton was. Died in his home in Los Angeles. I knew he had a stroke several years ago, back in 2012. And I knew he recovered from it. But I knew he was struggling with that afterwards. But certainly a prolific actor, absolutely 100%. When he's young, he's 12 years old, his father dies, from the UK. He ends up deciding to move to Los Angeles sometime in the late 1960s to pursue acting. And he does a great job with it. And anything you see Tim Curry in, he is always a standout in what he does. It could be a small role, could be a big role. I'm thinking about him in Home Alone 2 when he plays the bellhop. Not the bellhop, but he plays the manager of the hotel. And, Kevin goes in and he's on this mission to figure it out if he's really with his dad and whatnot. It's just a great performance. I got to be honest with you. Great performance. He was in Clue. He's in a couple other things as well. The Rocky Horror Picture Show. He was in Stephen King's It, even though I'm not a Stephen King fan, but also did some television, The Wild Thornberrys. He plays the voice of the father. Just a great actor overall. And by the way, same type of thing. Never throws out too much about him out there. He loves acting. He does what he wants to do. I know he had I think he was very big into buying homes and selling them and what have you. But, again, another actor that, again, kept to himself, didn't throw his politics out there, didn't scorn people for not believing what he believed in. But again, certainly a gentleman when you think about it. But again, another strong force in the entertainment industry. You got to appreciate that with Tim Curry. Same thing, never had any kids, though. I got to be honest with you. It's sad to hear that, but, people make decisions, people do what they want to do. And he made that about himself. So there you go. But certainly many people appreciate Tim Curry. They appreciate what he did. Love for gardening. I was inspired by his father, I'm told. And again, just a relatively private guy, rarely discussing personal details in interviews, just stuck to what he did. And I think, again, when you think about people from this era, they didn't come on and start talking about, you got to believe in what I believe in, you got to do this, we see that today all the time. And it upsets a lot of people. If you like Robert De Niro, and Robert De Niro comes out and tells you, I'd like to punch the president in the face. And you say to yourself, why are you acting like this? Whether you feel that way or not, that's up to you. If you have that hatred inside you, fine. But most of us just want to see you act, okay? We didn't ask for a political speech. We didn't ask for your thoughts on the, geopolitical sphere that we're in right now. We didn't ask what your thoughts on the president. Why would you speak about the president of the United States that way? Whether you agree with him or not. You love to punch him in the face, really? I single De Niro out. There's many other actors that do this. But just stick to what you do, okay? I think that is a good thing moving forward. Just stick and discuss what you do, okay? If you're with somebody on your own, you want to talk politics, fine, okay? But again, I don't like these journalists, these reporters, these interviewers that continue to hone in on somebody's political ideology, if you will, okay? We don't need to hear this from our actors, okay? You're there for a purpose. You're here to entertain, okay? You're here to make us laugh, make us think, all that stuff about the movie. Creating art, not creating this bifurcation between one side or the other. And I think that's all too common. And I think that's why people like Dolly Parton, Tim Curry, they stand out. They stand outside of this because they didn't fall into these traps. And I think that's sometimes the best thing you can probably do, is to move away from these things and not to fall into these traps and, again, continue to alienate your audience. It's just not worth it, folks. Just do the acting, make people laugh, appreciate your audience, and that's all you really should be doing if you're an actor, a singer, entertainer, comedian. Obviously comedians can be dicey with what they talk about, but don't alienate your audience, okay? Don't do that. I think all too common that happens today, and especially in Hollywood. And people, they get turned off by it. They don't want to be lectured by Hollywood as to what to do, where to find their moral compass. I don't know if there's any moral compass there, too, by the way, given what we know about Hollywood. But again, I just wanted to say again, Dolly Parton, Tim Curry, please rest in peace. And again, condolences to their family and friends. You will be greatly and sorely missed. All right, folks, let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about the South Carolina primary that took place yesterday, the runoff race between Darline Graham and Ralph Norman, with Graham being the victor, winning really just close race. It was 53 to 47%. Certainly got some edge by being endorsed by President Trump. Of course, the name recognition helps out. Okay, so that's big. Also, Governor H.R. McMaster, of course, nominating her for the position and backing her, obviously gives her a little bit of an edge over Ralph Norman. I got to be honest with you, though. I think she'll probably win come November. I do believe that. But I'm not really impressed by this woman. I got to tell you why. I said that to you when she was debating Norman, and she was asked a question about foreign policy. She was asked about Taiwan, and she really didn't have an answer as to what to do. She was asked how she would handle the foreign policy and what have you with China and Taiwan, and she said, I really don't know anything about this. Now, folks, if you're going to be a U.S. senator, and you're going to represent the entire state of South Carolina, not just a small district, and you don't know anything about Taiwan, that's, again, problematic, I would have to say. So what does this woman really know? What really qualifies her to be a sitting U.S. senator? I'm all open for this one, folks. What I think this comes down to, and I think this is why President Trump endorsed her, I think that's why he wanted to push her, because she doesn't really know too much. Again, I'm not trying to insult the woman. I understand she's going through a lot of grief right now, and she was just foisted upon to take this seat just really a day after her brother had died. I'm sure this is not easy for her, and I'm sure she was probably coaxed into doing this. But she will be likely a rubber stamp for whatever Trump does. Whatever Trump does, she'll probably support it. And this is why I really don't like when presidents endorse various candidates, because then it looks like, okay, you've endorsed this person. That means you're going to do every single thing this person wants and asks for. And I think that's what Graham is going to be. I think Trump needs to get a coalition, if you will, where he can trust people. So in other words, if you get a Ralph Norman, who, by the way, endorsed Nikki Haley in 2024 at first, is Ralph Norman always a sure bet in South Carolina? And the answer probably is no. But Darline Graham would be, because Darline Graham doesn't know much. She probably will go by what she hears, what her brother's staff, who is with her now, will tell her to do, and she'll carry on that mantle. I think that's the safest bet for Trump, and what he believes will hopefully take the Senate again come this November, which I think is dwindling as time goes on, especially when I look at the Real Clear Politic polling right now and the way some of these states are leading. Even right now, Texas is in play. Can you believe that? Texas is in play with James Telefrico. Guy believes there's 6 different genders. God is non-binary. Whatever else he believes in, which is just ridiculousness. is giving Ken Paxton a run for his money right now. Now, you would think Ken Paxton, who's won, I think, the last 3 elections he's run in statewide, would just be a shoo-in. But that's not the way it's looking right now. Polling is showing that Tellerico is in play. And that's got to be troublesome, especially in a state as red as Texas. Now, of course, Biden ushering in God knows how many million illegal aliens into the state is problematic, especially in the voter rolls. But it's in play. So if Texas is in play, that tells me even South Carolina could be in play. So Graham, she's going up against Dr. Annie Andrews. I don't know what this woman brings to the table, but you've got to understand something. Even in a state like South Carolina, as red as it is, it's still in play right now. So until Graham wins, to me, she will not be continue to be a shoo-in like her brother was. Again, Graham had name recognition, obviously very well known, in the spotlight constantly. So you know who he was. You knew what he stood for. She's relatively new. So, again, you have to understand something. If it's a low turnout for Republicans, and I do believe that will be the case this fall, folks, if it's a low turnout for most Republicans, because either the position by the Republicans is very weak or they're simply not demonstrating they're going to solve these problems, whichever one it may be, and you have low turnout, you still need those independents, and you still need to get some like-minded Democrats that are not going AWOL over to the left side of the aisle. And if there's any moderates left, which there may be some, I don't know how many there could be, but there could be some. You need those people in South Carolina, you need those people in Texas. So you have to have a message that brings people together. You have to have a message, of course, that people can relate to. How are you going to solve their problems? How are you going to bring down inflation right now, which is greatly approaching 5%? How are you going to bring more jobs into the job market? How are you going to offer opportunities to young college students who are just leaving school? How are you going to do that? How are you going to get us out of this war we're in right now that is extremely unpopular to most of America right now? What are you going to do? Darline Graham, Ken Paxton, Mike Rogers, Susan Collins, Ashley Moody. Again, Florida's likely going to shift red this time. I understand that. But everything is still in play right now. Everything is still in play right now. And the sooner we understand this and accept this, that we've got to win these races. You're looking at the Democrats having a 54-46 lead in the Senate, and that's no good, folks. I'll just tell you that much. That's no good. And as a result of that, if the Democrats do take power, you get a Schumer as the majority leader. That means you probably get some of these people like a John Fetterman, if you will, which can probably the only one that would probably vote across the aisle. You'll see him come back to the left on this, a lot of these issues. Most of these issues. Not all of them, but most of these issues. He'll come back to the left with them. And he will not caucus with the right anymore. Because, again, it's all about popularity, folks. You've got to stick with your party, sometimes to a T. So I think that's what we're looking here. So do you really want 55 votes? Do you really want 55 votes when you know that the Democrats are going to be coming after you this fall? Actually, this next 10 year, as Congress is newly seated in January. Is this what we want? Because you know they're going to go after President Trump. You know this as sure as I'm sitting here speaking to you. They're going to go after President Trump and try to find ways to impeach him. And this time they would actually have real grounds to, given this war, given some of the actions that President Trump has taken with the military, the bombing of fishermen in the Caribbean. I mean, there are actual things you could look at what President Trump has done and say, this is unconstitutional, this is legal. This is a international crime. And again, look at Maduro. Where the hell were we following the Constitution on that? Where were we following the Constitution on bombing these ships? And especially Pete Hegseth's big blunder, of course, double tapping one of them, killing people clinging to wreckage. All these things are on the table. So I think Trump and Hegseth especially certainly don't want the Democrats to take over. Again, I don't think the Democrats have anything to offer. Again, I would never vote for a Democrat in my life. You couldn't pay me to do so. But I'm thinking about the young voters right now. I'm thinking about the millennials, the Gen Zers right now, the ones that aren't really involved in politics until, next month, September. We start to focus on what's going on and decide, who am I going to vote for? Who's got the best message? Who's got the momentum? Why is this happening? Why are we doing this? I voted back in 2024 to fix the X, Y, and Z, and now it's coming back. And what are you going to do about these independents, who are anti-war, who came across the aisle in 2024, you've lost them. And you're going to need them in a lot of these swing states. So what is the position? What's the policy? We can talk about how the left is fringe and they're lunatics. And they want to pack the Supreme Court, and they want to add statehood to D.C. and Puerto Rico, and, all these other things. Women and men's sports, you name it. Crazy. It's ridiculousness. And they're not going to fix the economy because they have no intention of fixing the economy. But the idea is you have to offer the alternative. How do you fix this? How do you turn things around? The best thing would be if President Trump walked away from this war. As I've said to you time and time again, he's simply not doing it. I don't know why. Now we're slapping on tariffs on countries like Canada and getting ourselves into a trade war with them. Again, a stupid position. Can you believe this? This one comes out of Politico, too, by the way. Again, you can't make this stuff up, folks. Why focus your energy on a trade war with Canada right on the onset of these midterm elections? Why would you do that? And I always ask the question to you, who is advising the president? Because whoever is advising the president is not giving him the necessary information he needs. So we're looking at Canada right now. Mark Carney is simply saying we're not playing ball with the United States. We've signed the U.S., Mexico, Canada agreement. You've, gone back on this. Now you're going to slap tariffs on us. You come out and said that we don't need Canada? Okay, fine. We'll slap tariffs on you then, too. So now we're going in this back and forth. We know that parts of the United States economy are simply relying on Canadian oil, by the way. This is what worries me the most because the world diesel supply is dropping significantly, folks. But largely the American Northeast is reliant on Canadian oil to heat homes, to have this. We need this. This part of the country needs that oil that comes in from abroad, that diesel that comes in from abroad. Yeah, it's refined here, but we need that supply. If we stop getting it, that's a big problem. 64% of all the U.S. crude oil that is imported comes into the United States from Canada. I want you to think about that for a second. We don't drill for heavy crude because we don't have it. We have all the sweet crude, which is the lighter crude, which goes into unleaded gasoline, which we get at the pumps, right? Fine. But that's why you're seeing diesel prices so much higher is because we don't even have it here. We have to get it from Canada, from Venezuela, from the Middle East. We just don't have those reserves here. We just don't have it. So everything has got to be imported for diesel. Okay, that's a given. We're dwindling down on our Strategic Petroleum Reserve right now. That's a big problem as well. It's a big problem for our military. To me, it's a national security risk if we're going below the 270 million barrels, which we're greatly approaching, ladies and gentlemen, by the way. And so I say to myself, okay, the plethora of the imports of diesel, which, by the way, we're running low on, comes in from Canada. Is this the time to get into a trade war with Canada? What if Canada starts putting tariffs on something coming in such as oil? And then they say, okay, if you're going to put these tariffs on us, we're going to put these tariffs on this good. Okay? Well, this is what we're going to do to you. You want this? You're going to pay 50% more for this diesel coming in. I mean, this in and itself would upend the U.S. economy because how will our trucking run? How will we get shipping going? How will we get products from point A to point B? This is what the economy runs on, trucking, folks. And you may not think about it, but that's what it runs on, trucking. Getting things from point A to point B to get to the market so you can go buy it. That's what it runs on. It runs on diesel. America runs on diesel, and I'm told Dunkin' too sometimes. By the way, I go with Dunkin' over Starbucks. Don't you, folks? I can't stand Starbucks. I got to be honest with you. I don't like these. I don't like Starbucks. I just can't do it. Got to go with Dunkin'. Anyways, back to my main point. We've got to talk about what happens as a result of this, if this happens, and for how long this happens for. Because now we're getting several things coming in the United States that are going to be met with a higher tariff, which means it's a higher price. It's a tax. Do you want to pay more taxes in a time of inflation? Of course you don't. That's going to rush up the consumer price index. Obviously, folks, we don't want that, especially again in a midterm cycle. Where the hell is Scott Bessent? Where the hell is Howard Lutnick? Why are they not advising the president to stop doing this? Anyways, here's Mark Carney, folks. I want you to listen to him first. This is him refuting what President Trump has said and why these negotiations have failed. Listen to clip 2.
Canada has always worked towards these goals, even while America's attention and dedication to them have wavered. We've consistently proposed long-term partnerships, while America has often pursued short-term transactions. The gap between partnership and competitor, unfortunately, has remained too wide in recent days. So last evening, I instructed our negotiators to return to Ottawa. We cannot accept what they've offered, and we will not give what they've asked. Over the past year, the U.S. has imposed a series of tariffs that violate its commitment under our agreement with them in Mexico, so-called CUSMA. The United States has continually changed their rationale for these actions, from fentanyl to taxes on U.S. tech giants, to certification of U.S. aircraft, to the sharing of tolls of a bridge that Canada built and paid for, to our dairy policy, to provincial decisions not to sell American alcohol during the trade war.
Okay, so you get the picture. He's talking about what the tariffs are doing to the Canadian economy and what they will do. And he says, we can't abide by this. So now what we're going to do is we're going to slap on a range of tariffs on their imports in the country. So we're going to make their costs go up. See how it works, folks? Again, in the end, the consumer is the one that gets screwed, of course. But of course, the objective is to raise revenues on these tariffed items. This is what they're saying to us right now. So the tariffs range from 15 to 25, 50% and target an array of American exports to Canada. This would include steel, aluminum products, fishing rods, gym equipment, seafood, lobster, crab, which, by the way, I never recommend you eat. But nonetheless, this is what they're going to do. Appliances, clothing alike, these are going to be set on September the 8th. So this is right around the corner. So now we're going to have doubling duties on American steel and aluminum to imports, 50%. This is going to be bad. This is going to be very bad, folks. This is no good. We don't want this. We certainly don't want this to happen. And the value of U.S. goods imported by Canada in 2025 that would be subject to the Canadian retaliatory tariffs. Both American, Canadian officials blamed each other for the last-minute request of why this is happening and what have you. See Carney saying this, Trump saying we don't need you, we're going to do this, you're unfair, we've got a trade deficit with you, if you will. By the way, Canada is one of the biggest trading partners with the United States. I believe they're number 2, if I'm not mistaken. So Trump, in his wisdom, they've decided they're going to use the Smoot-Hawley tariffs, which, by the way, were the problem for what caused the Great Depression. 100 different economists in the early 1930s told President Hoover, do not sign this into law. This is not the time to do this. This is going to be very bad. And what did Hoover do? He signed it into law. So now Trump is using Section 388 to administer these 50% tariffs for the first time. Yeah, this is sought to punish Canada for its dairy retail policy, the retaliatory auto tariffs, by the way. Again, awful. And, of course, to punish them for their ban on American alcohol, which, again, by the way, if they don't want it, why do we care? We could sell it someplace else. We don't need to do this right now. This is not good. So when they say the U.S. isn't interested in building a real North American economic relationship, they're not kidding. We simply think we can continue to go in and say, do this, or we're going to put these tariffs on you. We're going to put this tax on your goods, so your goods cost so much, nobody's going to buy them. No one's going to want to buy them. Again, folks, I don't know why you would do this, certainly amid the inflation that we're experiencing right now, which is rising, and no one's saying a damn thing about it. No one's offering a solution as to how we fix this. This, again, is a big problem. So while I can sit here and tell you this is a great idea, this is going to cause Canada to lower their tariffs, or they're going to allow this in the country, they're coming out right now and saying no. And by the way, just to reiterate my previous position, if Canada decides we want to cut our oil sales into the United States now, because we don't like the way we're being treated, and we decide to go with a partner like Canada to move to China, this is going to be problematic. If the two come together, And Canada decides, hey, we're going to start selling our oil now to China instead. We're not happy with the United States. We're not happy with these policies. We're simply just not going to sell you all this oil, which, by the way, is 4.2 million barrels per day, which is a lot. And we need this oil. Most of it is heavy crude, which we do not make. And then look at a country like China that's not involved in war after war after war. They're not spending money on war. They're spending more on their own business. We're spending money on more wars. Notice Pete Hegseth groveling to the Senate, we need more money. China's not doing that. Now, China's bolstering up their military, but they're not going to these endless wars. Canada's leading in AI. They're leading in, of course, manufacturing right now. They're leading, of course, in industrials and what have you. They're investing in business. We're not investing in business. This is a problem. And again, when you have President Trump, who is trying to cut off trade between Iran and 100 different other countries right now, again, I don't think that's going to be beneficial. Certainly, I think it's going to be pushing out the American dollar from a lot of these countries, whether Scott Besson knew it or not. He said that the other day, too, by the way. He actually went out and said that this is going to alienate people from the dollar. It's like, do you really want less people, less countries, less corporations to use the U.S. dollar? Why would you want that to happen, Scott? That's no good. That's going to make the dollar less desirable. It's less attractive, and less people are going to want it, and the value drops. Is that really what you want to do? I mean, who are we going to trade with? Argentina and Israel after this? I mean, come on. This is stupid. This is bad policy. So I don't know, again, who's advising President Trump as to why he thinks this is a good idea. To me, this sucks. I don't like this at all. I would rather see us have a reasonable trade with Canada, with Mexico, with China, with all these countries too, by the way, instead of putting tariffs on all these countries just on a whim. It never seems to work out, folks, sadly enough. And that's why we're seeing, again, the price of diesel. By the way, just so we understand this too, folks, I drew up these numbers for you as well. Price of diesel right now is up $2.35 a gallon since the start of this war. In the West Coast and Alaska, it's up $6.30 a gallon. Yeah, that's no good. And next Tuesday, Canada is reducing exports of its crude to the U.S. by 300,000 barrels per day. This is, again, is due to maintenance right now. But if this policy continues with Trump, and Trump keeps pushing Canada and, accusing them of this and that and ripping them off, and we don't need you, I fear the worst, that Canada will say, you know what? Okay. That 300,000 barrels we're just not sending because of maintenance problems and, of course, refurbishing. We're not going to start selling more to China. We're just not going to deal with you anymore. And I think that's what a lot of countries are going to be doing moving forward. They're going to be looking at the U.S. dollar. They're going to be saying $40 trillion in debt, bond market collapsing, tariffs on this, tariffs on that. They want us to pay all this now up front. We don't need this. We'll stick with BRICS. We'll stick with the BRICS that has 43% of the global GDP versus the United States is 23%. Chinese yuan is on demand now. They're using that to trade inside of the Persian Gulf. That's going to be happening moving forward. We're just simply going to move away from the dollar. We're going to move away from trading with the United States. And then we, by the stupidity of this administration, become more isolated. I don't think that's a good position. I certainly don't believe that's a conservative position, folks. Do you? Of course you don't. Why would you? So I don't like this. I don't like these trade wars, especially in a time like this. Maybe when you have more economic leverage over a country, a tariff, a small tariff, could coax that company or that country to do X, Y, and Z for you. That's not the case anymore. That's why the tariffs on Iran are failing. If this happened in 2015, 2016, yeah, the Iranians would probably cave. That's not the case anymore. This is a totally different Iran, militarily and economically. And again, I'm not saying that the Iranians are not struggling financially. They are. But again, it's a different economy they're dealing with. Different position in the world right now. And you're not going to see China, Russia, India, Pakistan simply leave Iran. They're just not going to do it. They are their trading partner, and they will continue to trade. Folks, by the way, I'm going to talk to you about this next article, too. This turns a lot of heads, too, as to why this happened, and maybe you'll say exactly the same thing. This is out of Slate News. And James Carville recently erupted over House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. I call him Hack Jeffries. He had a private meeting with Special Envoy Jared Kushner. Now, why would Jared Kushner meet with Hakeem Jeffries. Likely because Hakeem Jeffries is going to probably be the next Speaker of the House. That's number one. Okay, if the polls are correct, and they very well may be, I don't know if they are, but if they are correct, then Jeffries becomes the next Speaker. That means Jeffries is going to be the lead. He's the number one guy to go to on policy. And Jared Kushner, by the way, who on behalf of Israel, time and time again, continues to advocate for them, advocate for what's happening in the Middle East, probably wants some nice little deals going. That's probably what it comes down to. Now, James Carville is having a fit over this. He's saying it's a disgrace that, Jeffries would actually meet with Kushner, of course, and Kushner's the enemy and whatever. I was going to play you a sound clip, but he keeps cursing, and I'm not going to play that on this show. I'm just not going to do it. But, they're not happy with this. And, of course, we never got a full view report about what took place. Some people believe it was over cooperation, including housing, immigration, and cost of living. When the hell has he ever negotiated on this? Everything Kushner has been involved in is what's happening in Israel, what's happening in Gaza, what's happening in the Middle East, what's happening in these policies. He's never been advocating for immigration or housing or cost of living. What the hell? Why would he even be involved in that? He's not even a government official. He has this little title to him as a special envoy. The guy's never negotiated a damn thing in his life. Certainly not in this. Him and Witkoff. So I think when you're a billionaire, folks, you certainly get to have those meetings, right? You get those meetings. And by the way, Jeffries is no different, right? He takes money from AIPAC too, so he certainly won in the club, gets some money dished off to him, right? Kushner gives a little deal, of course. That's certainly possible as well. But Carville was, not happy about this. Not at all. Not at all. So I thought that was pretty funny. I think, and again, this is just me, Kushner likely was talking about the Middle East. What the policy is going to be moving forward for the remainder of Trump's tenure. Where can we get money in? Where can we push things through? What policy can we get? We want this. We need to get this. This is what Israel wants. Where can we find some common ground here? So it looks like, you're not helping us, but you're really helping us. What leverage can we get? Okay, this is what it's all about. And when you're a billionaire, you get to get those meetings, folks. That's just the way it is. Guys like you and I, we don't get those meetings, sadly enough. So, yeah, why else would Kushner meet with him? That's the only reason why. That's the only thing he's concerned about. That's the only thing he's ever been concerned about, too, by the way. Acting on behalf of the American people, when the hell did this happen? Never. Never, ever. All right, folks, let's go on. We have some more topics we've got to discuss today. This one I was going to talk with you about last week when the trial was going on. We didn't have time to go over it. This is out of the New York Post. It says Mark Zuckerberg's Meta has agreed to pay up to $16.68 billion as part of a historic settlement with 29 state attorney generals who allege that the company purposely built Instagram and Facebook to addict children. That's an interesting thing. I got to be honest with you. And by the way, I know these apps are addicting, especially when the brain is wired that way. You get a message, you get a like, you see the little heart, you get happy about it, right? We all understand this. We know what doom scrolling is, right, folks? Of course you do. So now this agreement now includes a commitment from Meta to make design changes to the apps, including imposing daily usage limits, nighttime blocks on the app, usage before bed, and, of course, enhanced age assurance measures on the apps, of course, to ensure underage kids can't use Facebook or Instagram. Now, by the way, I'm not opposed to that, too. I don't think kids should be on these apps. I got to be honest with you. They shouldn't be on TikTok, shouldn't be on Instagram, shouldn't be on Snapchat or Facebook or X. I don't think they should be on these. There's no reason for them to be on it other than to look at things they're probably not supposed to be looking at and talking to people they're probably not supposed to be talking to. That leads to things like bullying and what have you. The phones, folks, for children, not a good thing. Really not a good thing. But the way that he settled, settled for $16 billion. I mean, that's a huge chunk of change, folks. Do any of the victims, so-called, get any of this? Probably not. But these states, got their money out from them, and that's the way it works. So Meta also agreed to create additional tools to help parents and guardians to protect their kids online as part of what they was described as a consent judgment. So let me ask you this. Why would parents in the first place let their kids be on these apps when they know they're addicting, when they know that anyone could post anything on them, anyone could reach out to their kids? Why would you put your child, your minor child, in this position? I got to ask you that question. Why would you allow them to do that? Nothing positive comes from being on these apps. Again, they sit on them, they scroll on it, they never want to go outside, they never want to do anything, they never want to engage in person, they just want to send a message, this and that. Again, we're all guilty of those things, but it's better for a kid to go and experience life. They should be outside, they should be scraping their leg, right? They should be on their bikes. They shouldn't be on Instagram doom scrolling, following God knows who, listening to God knows what people put on there, which is usually trash too, by the way. And by the way, X is the same thing, Facebook, same thing, TikTok, same damn thing. They're all geared, again, to target this group of people, young people. So solve the problem by not giving your kid this iPhone, or at least not letting them at least be on these apps. That would be the first step as a parent. Again, you're the ones who are in charge. Mark Zuckerberg didn't make a law that you have to be on Instagram or Facebook. He didn't do that. He offers the platform to everybody, though, which, again, I'm not in favor of. But again, I don't think kids should be on these cell phones to begin with. I think they only lead to more problems. And again, being on these apps, you see a lot of people on there using filters, this and that, showing off this, showing off that. And again, it leaves this impression on kids that this is the way life is, when really it's made up to a degree. That's what it really comes down to. It's really made up. And it's done through editing the pictures, putting this on, making people look different than they actually appear in real life. And you think that's reality, when it's not. That's why those filters, if you will, that's why they're there for, to make things look more appealing. So this is what it all comes down to. Again, I don't know how much this is going to solve, or if this is, going to help the mental health for young children, of course. But I just would say, parents, you shouldn't be on it. You shouldn't really be on this. This is not what it is. They have a quote in here from him when he did that metaverse thing, when they had those, I think it was those goggles, right? You wore the goggles and you were in the metaverse, of course, which again is virtual reality. Again, fake, not real, made up. And it says here, in the metaverse, you'll be able to do almost anything you can imagine. Well, God forbid, folks. It's all made up, folks. It's all fake. Go out and experience life. Go out and see people. Speak to people face to face. Make eye contact. Go outside. It's summertime. You should be out playing. That doesn't happen anymore. They're all inside either video games or scrolling on these phones they shouldn't really have. I really think, I got to be honest with you, I think a lot of these parents moving forward will probably start moving away from the cell phones because there's no benefit to it. There's certainly no benefit to their children psychologically. Because, again, it creates this false world. It creates this false paradigm shift that this is what's beautiful. This is what I'm supposed to look like. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is how much money I'm supposed to have. This and that. It's just not going to work. Simply just not going to work. But I was really interested to see how California, where Meta is home to, is eligible to receive $1.5 to $2.1 billion. There you go, Rob Bonte. You can get some money for your state that's flailing and, of course, keeping some of these tax receipts. And, of course, these companies moving, which I imagine Meta would do if you pass this wealth tax. I'm all for online safety, folks. I got to be honest with you, I am. But again, kids should not be on this. Young kids especially shouldn't be on this. They shouldn't even have cell phones. That's my take on it. I don't think you can just blame Mark Zuckerberg for everything that a kid does. Where's the parent's responsibility? Where's the parent involvement? Why do the parents not know what the kids are looking at? Ask yourself those questions when it comes down to it. And since we're talking about Meta and what have you, when we're talking about really AI, let me go over this article for you out of Yahoo Finance, folks. You're going to love this one, too, by the way. It says, Alphabet, Meta, and Microsoft are heading a $3 trillion in debt in this AI boom. Who's been talking to you about this, folks? I have. I've been talking about this AI bubble for quite some time. And now what they're saying is that these 9 tech giants are now carrying $3 trillion in off-balance sheet AI obligations. And again, a figure triple reported to the debt that they have, nearly double a July estimate, which was $1.65 trillion. So think about hearing about this right now. If you have money invested in Microsoft and Alphabet and Meta right now, are you really going to be keen to be putting more money into that? Of course you wouldn't be. And by the way, we know that people are bullish on this. This is what the bull market is showing us. The tech companies are, again, the ones that are going to create this profit and the high valuations. But when you had, for instance, in 2000, right? It was cash burn rates of the dot-com bust with no revenue being produced. And what happened? We had the dot-com bust. 2008, we had the same thing with the mortgage-backed securities. Nobody could quite value. What happened to that? We had the financial bust and you had the recession of 2008. Now today, you're looking at these financials all behind the AI build-out, right? You were told AI is the next big thing. And by the way, it is going to be the next big thing. But these companies aren't producing a big profit to sustain what they're selling to you. So therefore, it never shows up on a balance sheet. Therefore, what are they really worth? That's the question you have to ask yourself. And a lot of them are producing nothing. So what's going to happen? At some point, that bubble is going to burst, folks, and I think it's going to happen in 2026. I was going to share this with you on Friday. We tackled the economics of the week, of course, but I figured you all would appreciate this right now since we're talking about Mark Zuckerberg, of course. But look at this. For much of 2026, the story was that behind big tech's free cash flow couldn't keep up with AI's capital expenditures. Interesting. Then it became a story about how the off-balance sheet arrangements took place, and now, thanks to new reporting, that number has attached to that second story. It has nearly doubled. So going from $1.65 trillion to now $3 trillion just in 6 weeks, folks. 6 weeks. They're looking at this, this debt that they now find themselves in, that they're trying to hide from the American people. Not going to look good for investors, folks. I got to be honest with you. And this is not a rounding error number. None of this. This is what's happening right now. People are finally saying that they're not producing anything, and there's really nothing to back this money they've thrown in. So I'm not telling you what to do with your money, not to do with your finances, folks, but just be careful. You start to see that stock drop. It's coming. It's going to happen soon. Not good, folks. Not too good. And by the way, you know, we talked also recently about the borrowing. We talked about the finances, about what's going on, what's happening. And I gotta share this one with you. This one you're gonna love. Let's shift our gears over to this. Trump now plans to raise borrowing limits on shaky ground as debt roils bond market. Well, what have I been telling you before? The bond market is screwed up right now. We've talked about how countries like China are just dumping their treasuries. They don't want to buy it. They don't want to have it. They don't want to buy the U.S. debt anymore. And President Trump, ahead of schedule now, wants to raise the debt limit now, as we generally do, as every president does, through the end of his presidency before Republicans likely lose control of both the House and the Senate on shaky grounds because of rising concerns over the national debt. Now, let me explain this to you. We see that the 30-year Treasury bond right now, we're sitting at, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we're sitting at 5.3% last week. That's a lot, okay? That's definitely a lot. Highest level it's been since 2007. And, of course, the average 30-year fixed-rate mortgage hit 6.6%. Not keen, especially for people wanting to buy a home. Now what we're looking at, though, that 10-year Treasury bond right now, it recently hit 4.7%. And, again, if that number hits the 5% threshold, like the 30-year did, we're not going to be able to service our debt. That means we cannot pay back the debt, which means, again, we have no more money to borrow. That means that the debt just continues to spiral further and further out of control. So now what Trump is trying to do, in order, I guess, to salvage the rest of his presidency, just to raise this debt limit so he can, I guess, allocate money to spend, what he wants to do, right? This, by the way, this is what they're suggesting right now is taking place. He wants to avoid a standoff with the Democrats. He realizes it's likely going to be a Jeffries and Schumer run show. Of course, they're going to go after him. He still wants to be able to run some of his policies, should he be able to, which, again, I don't think the Democrats will allow. I think they're going to completely shut out the rest of the Trump administration's policies, whatever they may be. And he wants to raise the national borrowing authority to another $5 trillion. Just think about that for a second. He's already spent $11.5 trillion through his first years in office, right? 2017 to 2021. Now he wants, and by the way, already in his first year and a half, it's already equated now to $11.5 trillion President Trump has spent. Not a fiscal conservative by a long shot. But now he wants to spend another $5 trillion. And again, I'm sure a lot of this is going to go to the NDAA, the defense budget, of course. I mean, he's already looking to spend $1.5 trillion in 2027. And some Republicans say that looks increasingly unlikely as time goes on. This is how much he wants to borrow. Tom Tillis, probably one of the few Trump critics in the Republican Party, who's not running again, by the way, is already coming out and saying that trying to curb the debt, you wouldn't do a debt ceiling for the next 2 years. You'd use it as a lever to change things. Now, again, you see things like interest rates, things like spending. These are the indicators that lead us to believe that, again, we're probably going to go insolvent pretty damn soon. How are you going to pay this back? You're not going to pay this back. It's impossible. Again, we're incapable of writing a check, so what are you forced to do? Borrow more money. And you'll do that as long as you can. We're looking at things like Social Security, folks. That trustee warning back in June in a report that the popular entitlement program right now is on pace to being insolvent by the end of 2032. That's coming up, folks. And of course, it could force as much as 22% cuts to these benefits that people get, that they rely on, that they paid into, that they're not going to see. Then you look at the program's trustees moving up the date of insolvency by a year amid the annual federal deficits of nearly $2 trillion. There you go. Looking over at Medicaid. Let's look at Medicaid right now. Look at that insurance trust fund right now. That's projected to become insolvent by 2033. Again, I'm not surprised. We've seen the Treasury just totally take money out time and time again, money that is allocated directly into those funds. What happens whenever there was a surplus? The Congress would take money out, and they would use it for whatever program they wanted. Again, it's not shocking, folks. Take. You never put more money back in. It's Congress that causes these problems. Congress, right? What did I tell you yesterday? 2026 budget, $7.85 trillion. We only took in $5.9 trillion from the taxpayers. And nobody sees a problem with this? How much longer can you spend like this? Like a drunkard on a bender. How long can you do this for? Before you reach in your pocket and say, nothing's there and no one's putting any more coin in my pocket. And at some point, you got to pay the piper, folks. That's what it all comes down to. And when that moment is, I don't know. But you're going to be at, what, $45 trillion in debt? Approaching $50 trillion? Just by 20... when is Trump leaving office? 2029? Yeah, January 2029? I mean, this is where we are. This is where we're headed. Fiscal chaos right now. And again, I don't know if these budget reconciliation packages that Trump wants will actually be passed. Certainly not with any spending cuts. This is what we should be doing. And by the way, this is what Trump ran on first in 2016. Let's cut some spending. Let's clean up a lot of this government malfeasance, which we all loved, by the way. And we thought when Doge came in, we'll save a lot of money. That went away really quickly, didn't it, folks? That went away really fast. Now we're talking about spending even more money that we don't have, that we can't get other countries even to buy our debt. So this, again, is troubling to see just from the slightest point of view when we look at our future. Because what do we have to show for it? We're living and borrowing, and we're just paying things off by IOUs. We're not taking in any money that we actually use, and we're not paying down that debt in any meaningful way. We're not doing it. We're not even trying to do it at this point. And what are we spending money on? It's not like we're spending money on infrastructure, education, healthcare, things that Americans actually want and need. We're spending it on more wars. We're spending it on foreign aid. I mean, it'd be one thing, folks, if we had the best roads, the best sidewalks, the best bridges, the best, technological advancements in buildings and what have you, and investing in the United States and investing here and investing there. But we're not doing that. We're doing the exact opposite. And it's very, very upsetting to see this take place right now. So again, folks, I expect the bond market to rise, of course, and I expect this borrowing to continue, and I expect insolvency sooner rather than later, folks. Sadly enough to tell you. Sadly enough. Because we're on that track and we're not getting off the train. And that is the Trump train right now, and that's where it's headed, sadly enough. The AP News has a very important topic. I think it's a good article we can close today off with. We got about 5 minutes remaining in the program. I want to talk with you about this. This came out yesterday, the news about this rather, that the Kremlin says that CIA Director John Ratcliffe held talks in Moscow with his intelligence counterparts. Now, this is very important, especially in foreign policy right now. Why would John Ratcliffe hold talks in Moscow with his intelligence counterpart? This is, again, a rare, secretive visit right now, especially at a time when relations between Russia and the United States is, hanging by a thread. I think that's generous to me even saying that. Now, he didn't meet with Putin, but Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that Ratcliffe did not meet with Putin, but was informed of contacts that were on the intelligence agency's level. So he met with his counterpart. He didn't meet with Putin, didn't meet with anyone like Sergei Lavrov or anyone like that. So I think when I first heard this, I said to myself, okay, they're not really telling us what this was about, what's going on here. So what do we think it could be about? What are people saying they believe it's about? Well, people like Professor Glenn Deason believe that the meeting could have been held over the blocking of Ukrainian ports, for instance, in the Black Sea. This is obviously affecting trade inside of Ukraine right now. Certainly a lot of their big commodities, wheat, corn, you name it, not going anywhere. So they're not generating any revenue. And that could be the reason why they went there. They said maybe you could open up the ports. Could be something like that. Probably not, though. Because this is exactly what Russia wants to do. They want to landlock them, essentially, and prevent them from getting any more revenue. And this, of course, dwindles down their ability to buy things, to produce things, to get things into the country. This is exactly what Putin wants. So, again, I don't think you'll see Russia stop that anytime soon. Some people suggested that, for instance, he could be talking about the possibility of Russia invading NATO countries. I don't really buy that one. I got to be honest with you. I don't think they would send Ratcliffe to do that if that was the case. You wouldn't send your CIA director, by the way, to focus on that. You would probably send a Marco Rubio, who, by the way, the Kremlin doesn't even speak to, by the way. They don't even take him seriously. So I don't think it's that. What I do think, though, what it could be, some people have said that there was an ultimatum at play regarding the war. I don't buy that as well. I really don't believe that. I don't think Ratcliffe went there to threaten the Russians. I don't think that would even work at this point. Folks, right now we know that the Russians have won. And how do we know the Russians have won? Well, because we had an idiot like retired General Keith Kellogg. What did he come out and say the other day? That Ukraine should start conscripting women into the Ukrainian military. A stupid position. Why you would put women in harm's way as a man, I have no idea why you would suggest this. But nonetheless, he suggested this. Why? Because, again, you're seeing over 2 million Ukrainian men dead. You're seeing teens now being conscripted into the military. They don't want to go. You're seeing people fleeing Ukraine because they don't want to go to the front lines where they are definitely going to be cannon fodder. They don't want that. It's a death sentence. They don't want to do this. I'm not saying we don't have brave Ukrainians out there fighting. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not doing that. But what I am saying is people are fed up with what's going on. They don't see an end to this. They don't see a victory in this. This is as Putin takes more and more land. So what could the meeting have possibly been about, this very quick meeting? Let me play you really quickly President Trump, because I tend to agree with him on this position he's taken. He was speaking with Glenn Beck this morning, and he had the following to say about the meeting between Ratcliffe and his counterpart in the Russian intelligence. Take a listen.
None of the above. He's there on, very sort of semi-routine. I hate to disappoint people. We would like to see the war with Ukraine end. That's a war would have never started, Glenn, if I were president. That's one of the negatives of not having it done that way. I think this way has actually turned out to be bigger in many ways. But you wouldn't have had the war with Ukraine, and you wouldn't have had 25 million people coming into our country like they did, just come in like we were a bunch of fools. It was so sad. But they, 20, and I think the number's higher than 25, frankly. But they came in from prisons, and they were drug dealers, and they were murderers, and everything else, and they poured into our country. You wouldn't have had that. But you would not have had the war in Ukraine. John Ratcliffe is a fantastic guy. He's the head of the CIA, and he is not in there for any of the things that you said. Now, something may come out, out of it. We're working very hard to get that war ended. And frankly, they both want to see it ended.
I believe him. I got to ask. I believe him. I think that's the most rational reason. The CIA, of course, was involved in this early on. Of course, we saw with the Maidan Revolution, behind the scenes, fomenting this war. So I think if there's a rational aspect to this, it's to resolve this war and to get it to end sooner rather than later, folks. That's what I truly believe. I honestly believe that. I honestly believe that that's why he was probably there. I don't believe that he was there to issue an ultimatum or talk about trade, anything of the such, or anything about Russia invading NATO. I think Russia doesn't need to invade NATO. NATO's destroying itself. And they would not want to take on a behemoth like Russia. That's what I firmly believe, folks. That'll do it for today's show, folks. Thank you for being here today, as always. I appreciate you so much. Please make sure you're sharing the show when you can. I appreciate that as well. Make sure you're staying prepped, always, especially in times of uncertainty. We're seeing prices rise now, so get things while you can. Stock up while you can. Get food buckets while you can. Enjoy the rest of your day, folks. I'll see you back here tomorrow, as always. Until next time, be good, stay busy. God bless.